Superior, Chequamegon Bay, Greater Northwoods Green Fire Fundraiser. I'm going to be posting a little bit here at the beginning this morning or this evening. My name is Terry Dalton. I'm the president of the board of Wisconsin's Green Fire, and it's very exciting to see everyone here. So thanks for taking some time this evening. We were kind of joking on our planning call that Dolly, Ledin, who's one of our speakers tonight, was perhaps going to be a few minutes late because she was at yoga class. So we decided that probably the best way for us to start the program tonight would be for everyone to get in a nice yoga pose. So we're going to have a little, if everyone can get in a yoga pose, come on, my husband Jeff here, or you can stand up. We want to see the yoga poses. And
we have a family yoga pose.
It would be very clever. You could do down dog or plank or crane or whatever you can manage.
Taz and I are going to do upward dog and down the hatch.
There you go. So there's our yoga poses, right?
Okay. We
Very
just
good.
need,
All
we
right.
just need screenshots of this.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So, okay. Well, just to acknowledge the folks who have helped us organize tonight, we are calling ourselves the Four Musketeers, myself and my dear sister, Diane Dalton, and Kathy Techman and Nancy Larson. We kind of have folks from almost all the geographic areas of the 4 or 5 counties involved here. Actually 3 of us hosts, Kathy, myself, and Diane live in Iron County, and Nancy lives just south of Ashland in the Pinocchio Hills there. So they'll all be chiming in here as we go along. A couple just, I'm sure most of you have been Zoomed to death since COVID, but just in case, a few ground rules for how to work Zoom. If you haven't done it before, in the lower left of your screen, you'll see a little microphone, and that's the mute button. You can click on that if you want to speak or to mute yourself. We encourage people during the presentations to mute, because if your dog barks or the phone rings, then the screen goes to your phone. So just keep that muted unless you want to participate with speaking. We're also going to, one of our purposes tonight is to have conversations and hear from you folks more than us being talking heads. So we're hoping as you go, we've got the chat box there. You can click on that and write comments or questions. We'll also be opening up during the 2 discussion periods, and you can try under reactions down there at the bottom. There's a little thing you can click on where you raise your hand like that. I don't know if you can see me raise my hand. And it comes on for a minute and then fades out. So we'll try to catch those, or you can just give a holler, unmute and give a holler if you have a question and we missed your raised hand. I'd also just like to acknowledge that, you know, here, especially up here in the North Woods, we are all living on and enjoying lands that belonged for many, many generations to the indigenous people, our Native American neighbors. And I think more than ever, we know it's important to acknowledge that and their stewardship over the years, and our hope to have growing partnerships and learning more about ways to be culturally in tune. So that's, I think, always important for us to have in the top of our minds, especially around Thanksgiving time and holidays, and when we look out at that beautiful landscape out our windows. So I was just going to share a quick summary of like why Green Fire and what we're here for tonight. Obviously, we've invited folks who are members of our organization already, and then we've invited a lot of people who may not know much about us who we think would like to learn more. And we're hoping that you'll want to join in with us on some of the work that we do as time goes on and you learn more about things that we're doing that are relevant to your life. A little background on how we even came to exist and our purpose. We started almost 5 years ago now, at a time where there was a lot of concern about the fact that nobody, well, not nobody, but that there wasn't enough attention being paid to science and natural resources in our state. And particularly, there were a lot of issues going on in Madison where science was just not really going into the process for when we make decisions and plans and legislation. So we formed around that idea. But I think over the time that we've been an organization, what we've seen is that the need for people to clearly communicate science is more important than ever. I look at the COVID situation, and one of our scientist friends back last spring was on the phone with me and kind of pointed out the fact that here we had a pandemic and people weren't really paying attention to science, even though it was a life-threatening, potentially life-threatening situation. And I think as we see our country being more and more divided, we realize we have to think of new ways to communicate that science and reach across those boundaries and make the science understandable and compelling and meaningful. So really what Green Fire is all about is pulling together deep expertise in science, but then putting it out there for people to use in a way that we hope is meaningful and productive. So that's kind of our, in a nutshell. And with that, what I'm going to do is turn the microphone over to our executive director, Fred Clark, who's down in Madison, and he's going to give you just a really short little PowerPoint on Green Fire. And partners, did I forget anything in the intro?
We didn't hold that yoga pose very long.
No, well, I'll go back into that now.
Well, welcome everyone. Really glad to be here, although I'm sorry that I'm not there, quite honestly. I'm your token Southerner tonight, calling in from the west side of Madison. But I do have the pleasure of serving as the executive director of Green Fire. And with that, I would like to just take a few minutes and let you know a little bit about the organization. Some of you are longtime members, that is for 5 years, and you know us well. But for others, we know that you're perhaps new to Green Fire, perhaps you've heard of us. And we want to leave tonight with everyone having a little better understanding of what we do and why it's important. We want to welcome you into the Green Fire family. And really the goal of these events is to build our base of support and have some fun while we're doing it. I'm going to take this silly hat off before it jingles on me. We are as Terry said, we were formed in 2017 as a membership organization. And today we have just under 500 members within Green Fire that come from as wide of a range of backgrounds as you could imagine in conservation and natural resources. Probably about half of our members are conservation professionals, including folks who have spent their careers in fisheries and water quality, air quality, forestry, wildlife, education, environmental education, and the law. And that doesn't even describe all of the backgrounds that our members with conservation backgrounds represent. But together we have just a tremendous collective experience that we sort of use to focus on conservation issues and help achieve outcomes that are conservation positive. But that's not all of our membership. We're not limited in any way to folks who have 30 years of experience. Many of our members are just concerned, motivated, inspired citizens who care about the environment, who live and work all over the state from Superior to Racine, and who understand Wisconsin's conservation tradition and why it's important. And we, our Green Fire family embraces all of that. It's really our mission to support the legacy of conservation in Wisconsin through science-based management and through maintaining and restoring that environmental tradition that really has made Wisconsin a national leader for generations. We do that through working in a variety of ways. We're often in Madison, either virtually or in reality. We have a lot of engagement with policymakers and decision makers in the state capitol and in state agencies. Our policy liaison, Paul Heinen, who's on the call tonight, has a Rolodex as big as a car tire that has the phone number of not only every legislator, but everybody who's been in state government in the last 30 years. And we really use that experience to leverage our knowledge for people that can use it. Our members are frequently engaged with policy issues such as legislative hearings, administrative rule hearings, the goings on behind the scenes in Department of Natural Resources and other state agencies. And because so many of our members come from career backgrounds, people like Tom Hauge, who was the longtime chief of the Wildlife Bureau in DNR, we get listened to. Our opinions matter, and we use that real capital that we have to the best advantage we can. We do a lot of work statewide with conservation partners. The list of groups that we work with actively is too long to name, but includes groups like Midwest Environmental Advocates, like Wisconsin Land and Water, who our member Jimmy Vandenbroek here was formerly director of that group, is talking to our members at their conference last year, one of the last conferences that was done in person in this state, as a matter of fact. So our engagement with conservation partners is really how we leverage that knowledge and make sure, ensure that it gets used both for advocacy and for important policy development. And we're also very committed to opening the doors and helping create pathways for the next generation of conservationists, for the people who need to enter these programs, enter these fields, take on the responsibilities that so many of us have been fortunate to have, and continue the Wisconsin tradition. So our work with young people and students, you will hear more about tonight, but it's really an important part of our effort. We're organized around a series of issue groups or work groups that includes the ones that you see listed here, and I'm not gonna run through and name them all, but it's basically internally the way we organize ourselves around the really wide range of issues that we deal with. For example, we have a very robust and large wildlife work group that includes people like Peter David, who you'll hear from tonight. Many people that have come out of academia or are in academia, in public agencies, who inform and contribute to the work that we do. We have a climate change group that includes a number of climate change scientists, including Mike Meyer, who's one of our board members. And we are really always challenged to look at the many different ways that climate change affects every one of these issues. And the impacts of climate change on natural resources is a core focus for Green Fire. So within those volunteer work groups, there are opportunities to get involved, and we'd certainly welcome follow-up discussion, conversation with any of you if anything you hear tonight piques your interest. We've got a small staff team that includes yours truly, includes Paul Heinen, who I mentioned, who's on the call, includes our Assistant Director, Nancy Larson, who you'll hear from tonight, our Science Director, Sarah Peterson, who came to us this spring, is a full-time employee who really focuses on supporting our work groups and developing their efforts and their analysis. Our Administrator, Ruthie Ann Lee, who we share with Wisconsin Wildlife Federation, and Anna Hawley, who joined us this fall from 10 years of working with the Aldo Leopold Foundation. We've got a small, lean staff, and what our real mission is to leverage and help make effective the voice and the knowledge of all of those members, including many of you. We've got a number of focal issues that we are really active on right now. One of them that I'll just mention briefly is the important role and the opportunity for kind of optimizing greenhouse gas emission offsets through how we manage our forests, how we manage our farms and our conservation lands in this state. And there's a growing base of research and analysis that points out to how big a contributor to greenhouse gas emission offsets can come from better management of all of our working lands, our forests and our farms. And if we do that, not only do we scrub CO2 out of the atmosphere, it can help meet our goals as a state of becoming carbon neutral, but we can also, will benefit through clean water, will benefit through having more resilient ecosystems. This is like quadruple, quintuple wins when we start looking at how to optimize land use around climate. And that's an area where our members serve on the Wisconsin Initiative for Climate Change Impacts work groups, including the forestry work group, the wildlife work group, the water work group, and the agriculture work group. We got our oars in the water and a lot of boats around this issue. And the report that the Governor's Task Force on Climate Change will be releasing later this year is going to reflect a lot of input that Green Fire members have had. A couple of other issues you're going to hear directly from our member experts tonight about. One of those is related to a paper that we just released on Wednesday, actually, Tuesday, on what Wisconsin needs to do now to assure a sustainable future for our gray wolf populations. And Peter David's going to talk about that. Another issue that you'll hear a little bit more about is the work that we've done in partnership with Midwest Environmental Advocates in support of citizens' knowledge and awareness about the oil pipeline regulations in general and about the Enbridge Line 5 story, which all of you, we know, many of you are very close to and are intensely involved in that issue. Nancy Larson is going to talk about our work there. So all in all, we've got a pretty cool thing going. And I honestly, personally feel lucky to be able to work with such an incredible group of people. And if you're not a Green Fire member tonight, we want you to join the family, and hopefully you'll feel inspired enough to do that by the end of the evening. So with that, Terry, if there's time for questions, we can take some before we.
Yes. So I'm just looking to see if there's any, no one has any questions in the chat room yet, but if anybody has a question just on the kind of basic organization of the group, or we'd be happy to field those now. And we'll have more time after the presentations to look at some of those specific issues that Fred said our speakers are addressing. But questions, folks? He's on the hot seat. There you go. You know, in my environmental ed training said you always have to wait at least a minute. Bruce, do you have a question?
Because we really want to make it easy. I want you can call one of our phone operators and they'll talk.
I don't know if that's Bruce trying to ask a question, maybe.
You'll enjoy talking to them. And if you don't want to talk to them, go online. There's a very simple form to fill out. Just enter your.
Yeah, Bruce is playing another pitch. We're going to have our own pitch for you later tonight. So.
Okay. All right. Well, barring any other questions, then I think I'm going to turn it over to, I think Nancy is our first speaker. Am I correct on that one, Fred, on the agenda?
Yes, that's it.
That's right.
Oh, I'm going to introduce Nancy Larson, who's our assistant director, who's been taking the lead on some of our work that we've been doing to contribute to the efforts on Line 5.
Well, thank you, Terry, and it's fun to see so many old and new friends. I'm going to take a minute here and share my screen so I can get a few visuals up. Can you see my screen?
Looks good, Nancy.
All right. Well, what I'm showing here to start with are some photos taken near my house. Not too far from the Marengo. This is a picture of the Marengo River on the right and the Brunsweiler River on the left. And in the middle was some exploratory drilling happening last spring. So I live in Ashland County. Some of my neighbors are on this too, so that's pretty cool. Many of us are working on the pipeline issue or are quite aware of it. But for the Line 5 reroute, many rivers like this would be crossed. And that's part of the concern that we're having, and that has spurred us to take a look at this issue. So the Enbridge Line 5 issue pipeline is big in this area, and many of you are very, very familiar with it, working hard on it yourselves, so I don't need to go into that. But Wisconsin's Green Fire is just one of many organizations working on this issue. And we have kind of a particular niche and role. So our mission is to bring sound science, fairness, transparency in government decision-making about Wisconsin's natural resources. And environmental justice is also a core value for us. And like I mentioned, we're kind of a different animal. We are a little different than most conservation organizations in that our actual membership has a lot of bench strength. Not everyone, and we welcome everyone who shares our mission to join us. But we bring our members' knowledge of science and policy to bear on issues. And in this case in particular, we have members who've worked in regulatory programs that govern pipeline construction in Wisconsin. We know the workings of the agency. We've evaluated and issued hundreds of permits. We've worked on environmental impact statements, and we've worked in natural resource management in the Lake Superior region. So let's talk just a little bit about pipelines in general here. Wisconsin has a lot of Enbridge pipelines crossing it. And when I was still working at DNR, I found it very interesting to learn that the terminal in Superior is a large terminal, even on a national basis. So we're moving a lot of oil through the state. And we know that the proposal to reroute the Line 5 pipeline around the Bad River Reservation has a lot of background to it. Again, this is not something I need to go into today because people are well aware of it. So aside from the implications of climate change with the whole issue of our use of petroleum, and my left picture here is kind of illustrating the washouts we had after the 2016 floods. Our really big environmental concern about pipelines is the potential of spills. And we know what we have that could be damaged by an oil spill. You know, we look at these great water resources that we have in our land, our forests. So, you know, look at the Kakagan Sloughs and Lake Superior, and they're just incredible gems. So many people agree that the existing Line 5 should be decommissioned. And many people think the DNR should stop the Line 5 reroute. But the truth is the DNR doesn't have the authority to do that. Regulation in Wisconsin is pretty narrow. It's complicated, it's confusing, and it's often misunderstood. So last fall, a bunch of us met and talked about what we could do as Green Fire on the issue of pipelines. And we met with other groups. And we came to the conclusion that our best role would be to help provide information to citizens, and in particular to citizen advocates about the regulatory picture in Wisconsin. And my screen just froze. There we go. So we partnered with Midwest Environmental Advocates, and we're using their deep legal expertise along with our technical expertise to put out this series of guides on how oil pipelines are regulated in Wisconsin, particularly the construction of them. We have these on our website and on Midwest Environmental Advocates website. And people have told us that they're helpful to their efforts in working on the pipeline and understanding the regulations. And I'd also say that another measure of their impact is we've had over 4,500 visits on our website alone on these guides. We also put out, well, last spring, we had a webinar on pipeline regulations along with Midwest Environmental Advocates. And that's on our website as well, the recording. And you don't have to write down this long URL because you just have to go to our website and search on oil pipelines and all this material will come up. And then last September, we did a little video on our work on oil pipelines. And that's on our website as well. So where do things stand in a regulatory picture for Line 5? Well, Enbridge submitted its proposal to DNR last winter for crossing waterways and wetlands. And they also submitted information for the environmental impact statement. And in June, DNR determined that application was complete and they opened the public comment period. And when we reviewed it, we were really kind of dismayed that the application didn't have specific information on specific waterway crossings. We're also concerned about the proposal to blast some streams. There are a lot of other concerns that we and others shared. Our comments to DNR really kind of hit on this issue of that the specifics were not there. And so then how can the public comment period be closed? Since that time, since July, when the public comment period closed, Enbridge secured agreements with landowners. So the specific route is now known. We expect the regulatory sphere to happen a little faster now. DNR is now working on the environmental impact statement, and we're concerned that, and we hope that DNR will offer the public an opportunity to comment on the permits. We hope the environmental impact statement addresses all of the things we and many others talked about. I'm harping on this issue of the public having a chance to comment on the waterway and wetland exact permits and the exact crossings and how that will happen, because these are the major approvals that DNR will have. There's not much else. There's a stormwater permit, there's a little bit of incidental take for endangered resources, but that's it. So most people don't know that there's no ultimate authority to govern pipelines, the fate of pipelines in Wisconsin. So we recommend that there be a pipeline siting law in this state that gives the state authority to determine whether a pipeline is needed, if it serves the public interest, and if it does, where it should go. So kind of in summary, we think our work is making a difference for people working on the pipeline, getting that information out there. We know that pipeline issues are very complex. There's concerns about energy policy, climate change, access to energy, and environmental justice. They're all intertwined. Wisconsin's Green Fire's particular role has been not to advocate for or against the routing of the pipeline, but rather to push for decisions to be transparent, to use the best available science, and to follow the law. We're also concerned about the disproportionate impacts on tribal communities. And so I want to acknowledge our team that's been working on this. I've worked on it, but I also pulled in my poor husband, John Spangberg, who worked on waterway and wetland permits in his career with DNR. Other key members of our team have been Tom Giroux, Bruce Moore, Ron Grasshoff, Terry Dalton, Mark Borkhardt, and others. And I also want to thank Dolly Ledin and Holly Walter Kirby for reviewing some of our public information. And our internal team, our initial internal team that really set our direction, folks who have been just living and breathing the pipeline work and are so in tune with it and submitted incredible comments. I want to really acknowledge Joan Elias, Bobby Rongstad, and some of our other members of our initial team like Diane Dalton and Jim Perry and Fred Clark. So thanks all of you for bringing this forward. There's other people who've worked on it that wanted to remain nameless, but I thank you too. And I'm happy to take any questions, or we can talk a little bit later about it too.
Okay. Well, I think maybe we should keep going and hold. I don't see any questions in the chat room right now. The links are there. So let's just move on to the next presentation, which I think is Peter David. And we'll do questions at the end when we can have a more in-depth conversation. So Peter has been working with us on wolf management and wolf population work. He is coming to us with maybe two hats. He also, as many of you know, works at Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission. And Peter, are you ready to take it away?
As ready as I get.
He's been on the spot with us for several talks in the last week or so. So we're exhausting our welcome with him probably. So thank you, Peter, for coming up again to help us out.
I think I'm more likely just exhausting you, but at any rate, thanks for the opportunity to be here. I appreciate it very much, actually. It's really an honor to have a chance to talk a little bit about wolf restoration in Wisconsin and all of the things that Green Fire is doing for wolf conservation here. I'm a very, very, very minor role in Green Fire, so, but it's been a pleasure to be involved in this particular aspect. And it really is an honor because, of course, you know, Green Fire takes its name from that remarkable essay about that remarkable moment when Aldo Leopold had an epiphany, you know, watching the light go out in a wolf's eye, a wolf that his party had pumped full of lead, just like thousands of other parties had before him. And, you know, the amazing thing about Leopold is that it didn't end there, that he did give it a second thought. And really, in the end, you know, he challenged us to think like a mountain and to develop this new ethic with the land. And from the Ojibwe's perspective, the folks that I work for, you know, Mayangan is understood to be this more than human being that the Ojibwe have an intertwined fate with. You know, what happens to one is going to happen to the other, is the teaching, you know, and there's all kinds of examples throughout history where that's really been the case. And the Ojibwe, of course, also share with us really a very old ethic about how to live within the land. You know, so for me, who personally happen to be a product of the University of Wisconsin-Madison Wildlife Department that Leopold founded, and also the, you know, the teachings that have been shared with me from so many Ojibwe elders over the years, it really is an honor to talk about Mayangan. And this is, I think, an incredibly remarkable time for wolves in Wisconsin. And I really think for conservation ethics in general here. The wolfless Wisconsin that I was born into, I am Wisconsin native, grew up in Green Bay, now supports over 1,000 Mayangan. That's really a pretty remarkable figure. And while numerically that figure actually is probably always going to be lag a little bit against things like cranes and turkeys and some of the other things that have recovered in Wisconsin, I think that both ecologically and culturally, this recovery is the most significant, you know, ecologically, because there really is nothing like a wolf. They are a unique part, a unique role that they fulfill on the landscape here. And I think culturally, not just because of all this significance that Mayan has to the Ojibwe, but because I think this really reflects that there's been a tremendous change in the attitudes and the perspectives long held by the public at large. And I think we've made tremendous milestones from where we once were in the understanding that people have about wolves. Now, I think you could make a strong argument that the future of wolves in this state, maybe more than any other animal, wildlife animal that we steward, is totally in our hands. You know, we can do just about anything we want to wolf populations. Literally, it's up to us. And that's why I think Green Fire's leadership is so critical. You know, I think for the first time, it really is an opportunity that has never before existed in the history of the state. We don't have to manage wolves through eradication. We don't have to wipe them out like was the policy for such a long time. We don't even have to just sort of coax them back to some sort of tenuous and reasonably tolerated population level that might hang on and keep us off the endangered species list. I think we have the chance right now to think like a mountain and to really be leaders in wolf conservation and to show the country that coexisting with a healthy and an ecologically functional wolf population is important, it's valuable, and it's doable. And I think Green Fire is totally at the forefront of that effort. And Fred mentioned already the document that just came out this week, this Creating a Shared Vision for Wolves in Wisconsin. You know, and that document is really important because it provides a blueprint, I think, of how to go forward. If you haven't looked at it yet, pull it up off of the website and give it a good read. In just 14 or so beautifully laid out pages, by the way, which I can take zero credit for. It provides a history on wolf recovery here in the state. It summarizes some of the ecological significance and benefits that wolves provide. It addresses wolf-human conflict issues and talks about that. But most of all, it makes these recommendations about how to go forward. And those recommendations discuss things like updating Wisconsin's badly outdated wolf management plan. The plan on the books right now is over 2 decades old. It was written when we had about 200 wolves in the state. Nobody knew, frankly, what it was going to be like to have 400, much less 1,000. We've learned an awful lot in the last 20 years, and we need to incorporate that into that document. And it encourages us to go carefully while we do that. You know, there's no need to attack this wolf population until that plan has gone through a major revision. It focuses on really how to have an inclusive and transparent public process, including encouraging the reestablishment of separate wolf science committees and wolf stakeholders committees, so that all of the different people who have an interest and a stake in this have a voice at the table. It embraces the recognition of tribal sovereignty. It supports and embraces science. You know, it pushes for wildlife professionals to be guiding wolf stewardship rather than legislators, which has been the case, unfortunately, in the past. And I think if you sit down and you read that thing, it'll convince you not only do we need to have a healthy wolf population here, but we need to have a healthy green fire as well. And I'd really just like to thank Green Fire for the opportunity to have been part of that panel that worked on that. Fred and Sarah Peterson were very big components and contributors in that. Adrian Peterson, Tom Hauge, and Jody Haber-Sinkin and myself, you know, were the primary players, and I think we're really pleased. There's a lot of great discussion and a lot of thoughtful discussion that went to getting it to where it is right now. And again, I was honored to be able to have a role in that. And I'll just say finally myself, you know, Wisconsin has a tremendous history of being leaders in conservation nationally. You know, I was always proud to say I was from Wisconsin. But I think it's Terry showed us already, you know, that there've been some times in the past decade, maybe, when some of that luster's come off. And there's been some times when science has been pushed to the background. And I think, you know, we have wolf recovery going on in the state, but I consider Green Fire's existence as really an important part of the recovery of the conservation leadership that the state used to carry and is going back to. So with that, that's about all I have. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. And I see there's one question for you, but I think I'm just going to hold till after. Or Fred, you raising your hand there?
No, I'm just applauding for thank you,
yes,
Peter.
There you go. That was a lovely, lovely talk. Thank you so much, Peter. And we won't lose your question, Jim, but we'll. I just want to give Dolly and Shyanne a chance to visit as well, and then we'll open it up. I'm really excited to have Shyanne Eustace with us tonight. She's a Northland College student, and she's the co-chair of our most recently formed work group, which is our student and young professional work group. Dolly Ledin is one of our stalwart Green Fire members who's been kind of helping them sort out where they might like to go and what their niche might be with us. And they're both here tonight to talk a little bit about that effort. So I'm going to turn it over to Dolly and Shyanne.
Great. Thank you, Terry. So as you've heard already from Fred and our other speakers, we've got a lot of expertise in our organization. But one thing we don't have is a lot of youth. And we need youth. We also don't have a lot of diversity. And we need that. We're not going to be able to solve these problems and develop innovative solutions without the perspectives and the vision of young people, and the people with a variety of cultural backgrounds. So we really, one of our initial goals in the charter of our organization was engaging the next generation of young natural resource professionals. And so that's what we're trying to do. So we've created a student and young professionals work group. The chair of this new work group is going to be Will Vike. He's a student at UW-Madison. And Shyanne Eustace, as Terry mentioned, a student at Northland, is another leader in that group, and she's going to be our liaison to the board and to our leadership. And so I'm going to introduce Shyanne now, who has joined us. And Shyanne, although she's a student at Northland, is currently at her home in New Mexico. And Shyanne is a member of the Pueblo Nation, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about herself, her interests, and where that work group sees itself going. Shyanne?
Perfect. Thank you, Dolly, and thank you everybody for giving me the space to talk about our goals, what we kind of want for the future. But before I start, I kind of want to do a traditional introduction, just like part of my people. So, Goetzehopa, Kuchinakstijan Auschwitz, Washbanasuta, Kukiteme Osuta. So that's just like a traditional greeting of like my Indian name, which is Blessing. I come from the Sagebush clan, and I feel like that's just important to acknowledge. Yeah, I am currently in New Mexico. I am a part of the Pueblo of Cochiti, which is located along the Rio Grande. And our plans for Wisconsin Green Fire Student Work Group and Professionals, which is newly founded. I think we have been around at least a month now. We are currently reaching out to other students who are interested in Wisconsin Green Fire, trying to get them involved in our work group. And currently our goal is to produce a newsletter kind of giving out information and partnering with the professionals and retirees in Wisconsin Green Fire. So our overall goal is to connect the youth and students to professionals. That way students can have like a, I guess, path to whatever they want to do with the professionals. So say any projects students want to work on, we already have that knowledge here present, which is really good. And if students want to work on certain issues going on in Wisconsin, we feel like having a certain newsletter to highlight these different issues to get other youth involved, like say high school students. So we're just kind of creating like that connection. Sorry, my puppy's barking. But yeah, and then in the future, we kind of want to hopefully provide internships with different organizations connected to Wisconsin Green Fire. But that's more of like a long term, and hopefully post-COVID, when everything clears up, we want to have in-person conferences to kind of help students with different skills like grant writing and networking for organizations outside of Wisconsin Green Fire. Dolly, am I missing anything?
No, I think the main idea is that there are a lot of students around the state who are interested in science related policy related to natural resources. We want to let them know not only what Green Fire is doing, but we want to find out what they're doing. So there are a lot of young people around the state working on environmental policies. And so we want to give them a forum to communicate with us, to communicate with each other. And there is no statewide sort of organization of students with natural resources interests. And not that we're going to be able to start that, but to at least initiate some conversations.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Shyanne. And can you hold your puppy up?
Yeah, this is Marla. Wait.
Nice. Oh, is she ever cute?
She might be joining me in Northern Wisconsin.
Excellent. Hope she has thick fur. Very good. Well, thank you so much for those brief presentations. I think what we'd like to do now is open it up and see what questions and conversations we can have with all of you folks that are listening. So feel free to put something in the chat room or raise your hand, and we'll have some conversation.
And Terry, maybe if I can just ask, we do really want to connect with other campuses around the state, with other student groups. So if any of you know of student groups that we should reach out to, or faculty at other campuses who work with students, please refer that information to us so we can make those connections. Thank you.
So here's a question from Colleen to everyone. How can we get more schools and students? How can we get more schools and more students more involved? And maybe, I don't know if Shyanne and Dolly, if you have some ideas on how the group is reaching out to additional schools and students. I know just last night in La Crosse, we had a fundraiser and a university faculty there is gonna try to connect up. But have you guys been having some ideas on that?
Well, I'll just start
Yeah,
by,
so we,
go ahead, Shyanne.
okay, perfect. So we've actually been reaching out to students individually. We feel whoever is like on our contact list or whoever has shown interest in Wisconsin Green Fire, and as well as spreading it through like our own student campuses, since all of us come from different universities throughout Wisconsin. We're kind of reaching out to our different organizations on campus, and yeah, just reaching out to students individually.
And so we are starting a mailing list of individuals, of students, student organizations, faculty. So that's where we really need help building that and doing that outreach.
Thank you. We had another question from Larry McDonald on, let me just pull it up here. What is Green Fire's budget and sources of funding? I'm gonna let Fred field that one.
Sounds good. Thanks, Larry. So we're a lean organization with a fairly small budget for a conservation group. We operate, this year will be around $250,000. Most of that is paying for our staff and our program work that we've described for you tonight. But in terms of sources of funding, we get the majority of our funding from people like you. And that's individual donations that range from large gifts that we've been very fortunate to have received from some people who really just saw the value of our work, to hundreds and hundreds of Green Fire members who make additional contributions every year in addition to their membership. And that's really the biggest source of our pie of revenue is folks who just see the value in what we do. And so much of what we are doing, we kind of describe it as quiet work. Yes, we put out publications, we hold webinars, we organize conferences, we testify publicly, but a lot of work is also going on behind the scenes, meeting with agency staff. It's really building on the relationships that our members have to create influence. And that's work that we hope that you value when you consider supporting us.
Thank you, Fred. And not to skip Jim Perry, who had actually the first question in, he has a question for Peter. What strategy should we use to engage those who still believe that fewer wolves mean more deer for them to hunt?
Yeah, good question. And it doesn't have an easy answer. That's been embedded, ingrained for so long, it's going to be really hard to overcome, especially in people who've carried it for a long time. There is a tremendous role for education. I think, we need to find better ways to teach people what wolves really are than rather what we made them out to be. And just as an example of that, we talk about wolves being symbolic of the wild and the remote. I think that's a terrible misnomer. That's a perception that we got because that's the only place we left for wolves to live. And it wasn't what wolves themselves really were. You can talk to people about the fact that the highest abundance of predators was probably when Europeans arrived on the landscape, and yet wildlife populations were also at their highest levels. That the way it really works in nature, in what we're seeing now, and this is one thing I think that each year that goes by and that we get a little more information and some more data and science, that it's your deer population that really determines how many wolves you can have, not the other way around. And you can gather all the data on the impact of hunters and of overwinter losses and deer losses and bears and everything else. And and you can build that data. But it's, you know, it's going to take time. You're going to have to bring a lot of that, I think, to youth because their minds are going to be more open and more receptive to it. But I think we can get there. And the only other thing I would say, it's sort of a tangential response to that, but the other thing we have to do, I think, is to, you know, really let a wider circle of people be the stewards for wolves. You know, there's a lot of people in the state who are very positive attitudes towards wolves, but they're the ones that are not listened to as readily, oftentimes by natural resource agencies. And I think that's another place where Green Fire can coax by getting more people who have an interest and a stake in this at the table, who aren't necessarily just hunters or trappers.
I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. Let's just see here. Mary Jo Gingras has a question or comment here. Reaching out to environmental clubs at high schools, Ashland High School, Waters Program, Hurley High School, Woods and Waters, Luxembourg, Casco High School Conservation Club, and Port Edwards Ecology. Very good suggestions. Thank you, Mary Jo. Any other hands up? Otherwise, my husband has a question. He's always a great one for a question.
Oh, no.
I hate to give him the last word, though. All right, Jeff. The floor is yours.
It's to Peter in regards to the Gray Wolf paper that has been put together by Green Fire. First of all, spectacular job. I read it. Thought you did a very good job, and your crew. My question is, I think you and John Gilbert, your colleague, have always stated that the tribes you represent, they're all for state control of which you would be part of, your group, Glyphwick, but that they're opposed to harvest through hunting or trapping of gray wolves. And I guess my question is, does that, the information you have gathered on that, is that just gut feelings? Is it tribal council saying that? Or is it, have you polled the tribal members to that you know for sure they're opposing harvest? And the reason I asked the question is I've been following the woodland caribou issue on Lake Superior, and I'm sure you're well aware of it, but across the lake in Ontario, it's just the opposite. You have a endangered species of woodland caribou and a non-endangered species, the gray wolf. And Michipicoten Island, it had around 1,000 woodland caribou, and wolves crossed the ice and basically reduced the population by 950 caribou to a couple dozen. And when I follow this, the Anishinaabe band of Nipigon Native Americans, it's brother caribou. They despise the wolf. So is that just a regional thing that our Native Americans feel a strong connection to the gray wolf? And why is it just the opposite in Nipigon?
Yeah, great question. So certainly a big part of it is cultural. First of all, like how well do we know that that's the way our tribal members really feel? And first of all, I do want to say, you know, tribal members have a range of opinions, just like non-tribal people do. You know, there's people always say, well, how do the tribes feel about this? Well, you know, there is no one tribal perspective, and it'd be wrong anytime if I give that impression, you know, that's wrong. But we do know there's actually been some work that has been done, studies looking at tribal attitudes, and they tend to always be much higher and more protective of wolves. And of every tribe on the Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan that I know of that have a on-reservation wolf plan, every one of those has closed their reservation to hunting. Part of it is a regional thing. This is a part of Ojibwe worldview, you know, and that's not consistently held with Native Americans in other parts of the world. So, excuse me if I just went dark here. So it is cultural, but we do know we've had a strong direction from our leadership and our tribes. That's not to say there's not members in our tribes who would not hunt wolves if they had the opportunity. I'm sure there are. But the leadership's been very strong about indicating that this is the way they feel, that they feel wolves need to, that they are their brother. We don't even like to say the word manage them, you know, we're even getting away from stewarding them and just talking about the relationship that we have with this animal. And it goes back to the Ojibwe origin story, where, you know, wolves were the original partner brought down when the original man found himself lonely on the landscape, in the whole order of creation that takes place in the Ojibwe story, in that all of the other parts of creation really are more than human. They're above us. And we're dependent on them. We came last because we were the least important, the most humble, the most reliant. So it's well ingrained here. It's very strong. In the tribes also see it, though, ecologically quite strong, you know, and actually there on the deer issue, and I didn't get into that, but, you know, our tribes, deer are really important to them, but they do see wolves as being protectors to the health of the deer herd, and especially in the face of chronic wasting disease and other things. They want that function on the landscape. So
Great.
not shocking to me that other tribes and other places feel a different way. I will say just the Mishpecotton Island story is a very interesting one. Ecologically, I don't think it's terribly applicable to non-small island situations, and you could get into all of the ecology of that, but yeah, it's here. Our tribes have been very straight with us how they feel about this.
Thank you very much, Peter. And for those that are interested in the wolf paper, there's a lot of detail on Green Fire's approach on trying to incorporate and make a balance between those management ideas and cultural perspectives. So because we want to respect folks' schedules, we'll stick around a little bit more after the closing, but I want to turn it over to Fred for the last couple comments, and we'll have a closing thought from my sister's going to read a poem for us at the end. But so first off to Fred.
Sounds great. Thank you. And wow, what a wonderful exchange. This is really making me wish that we're not all at the Deepwater Grill right now, because after that discussion, we'd be ordering the next round. So this could just continue. Thanks, Jeff, and thanks, Peter, for that. So we want to leave you tonight with a request, and that is that you consider supporting Wisconsin's Green Fire. As Larry asked about, the majority of our support, almost 2/3 of it, comes from individual members and supporters, folks like you from all across the state. And that's what allows us to do everything you've heard about tonight and then some. So if you're already a member, thank you, and a supporter. We very much appreciate your involvement in Green Fire. You know, quite honestly, our members are what makes the organization. If you're new to Green Fire, we hope you'll consider joining, and we hope you'll consider a gift here at the end of the year to help us put us in a good position to enter 2021, continuing this work. And between now and December 14th, we have a special, as they say. One of our, quite honestly, one of our donors who has been with us from the beginning has made a commitment to match all of the pledge dollars that we can raise through these events between now and December 14th. And so if you are willing to consider supporting Green Fire tonight or sometime between now and the 14th, your gift will be matched and doubled. And if you're able to do that, we'll thank you, and we'll be able to thank them as well. But we welcome your support at whatever level is meaningful for you. Whether you're a gray wolf protector or a sustaining member, or there's another way of supporting Green Fire that you'd like to explore, we're grateful for support in all its forms. And you can make a gift through our website with the link provided here. You can do it through the mail, and Tom Giroux and Ron Eckstein will pick up your check in our P.O. Box in Rhinelander, which is our worldwide headquarters office. Or you can email me if you have other ideas about planned giving or other ways you might like to consider supporting Green Fire. And just like your favorite public radio station, and even accept your old car. So that thing in the backyard that may be buried in snow in the next 2 months, if you'd like to get that moved out between now and the time the snow flies, quite honestly, we can accommodate that too. Just let us know.
What about old boats, Fred? We're on the Chequamegon Bay there.
Yes, call us about that old boat and we'll find a broker.
Very, very good. Well,
So-
I want to say a quick thanks to my fellow Musketeers who helped organize this, Kathy Techman and Nancy and Diane for their networking skills, and to all the members here who also shared information. And I'm going to turn it over to Diane, my sister. She's going to do a little closing poetry.
Hey, Fred, take it away.
Got it. I'll be right there.
So we wanted to end our program tonight with something inspirational, something fun to look forward to. After all, we've had kind of a heck of a year. And so I'd like to look forward to the darkest of days, the winter solstice, which I always think is magical, and also the returning light and hope with the new year. And give a toast to the gift of giving, not just for our organization, for other people who might need your support or your help, or just a friend. And in so saying, I'd like to end with a poem that Terry brought my attention to that I really love, by Robert Frost. It's called Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. Those woods, they're like, I think I know. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound is the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. And here's a cheers to all of you. You have a great new year.
Thank you so much for coming, everybody. And if anyone has further questions and wants to stick around, our speakers and organizers will stay on the Zoom for a little bit, but we really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Great to see all you good friends.
Take care and stay well.
Exactly.
And
Stay healthy.
thanks to the speakers. Thank you very much, speakers. I see one chat there. Oh, Dolly Ledin says, what about old husbands?
You weren't supposed to say that out loud.
Oh, darn, that's right. It was saying privately. Well, you and I don't have old husbands, Dolly.
Do you mean old husbands, or chronologically you've been with them a long time, old husbands?
Yeah.
Either one.
Either one.
I just thought old cars, old boats.
Oh, right. Old husbands. Well, they could say old wives too.
The old car is probably worth more than the old husband here. But
There's no such thing as an old wife.
Old wives tell no tales.
Oh,
Old wives.
I like that.
Yes. Well, thanks everybody for helping organize. And I don't know. Hi, Dale. Hi, Dwayne. I don't.
It's great to
Are
see
you
you
there?
guys.
Hello, Randy.
Harold
Randy.
says hi.
Dwayne, Lottie, are you still alive? Oh my gosh.
It's right here.
I know. I'm giving him a hard time.
I'm barely alive, yeah.
We miss you.
I'm still
We
kicking.
do. Harold says
And there-
hi.
That Shuby too is the president of my lake association, Randy. Nice to see you, Randy.
Thank you for inviting me, Terry. It's been very interesting.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming, everybody. And thanks
Thank
to everybody for speaking and so forth. Thanks, Peter. You've gone
Yeah.
above and beyond. We won't call you
Good
for a
job,
while
Peter.
now, I think.
Peter,
Thank you,
that was
Peter.
it was great.
That was
Thank you,
perfect.
Peter. Excellent
I
job.
clap. I clapped 3 times during your talk. At least 2.
Diane,
Well, thanks for the kind words. I really do appreciate the opportunity Green Fire gave me to work on that and try to represent Mayangan and the tribes into that document. It's that kind of collaboration, I think, that's really is going to take us further down the line.
Yeah, really necessary.
Yeah, I think our speakers all deserve Oscars. Way to go, Nancy and Dolly and Cheyenne and Peter.
Yay.
It was really nice to have Cheyenne on too.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
Good job, everybody. It was really, truly inspirational.
Good job with the sleigh bells tie.
Loved it.
And your dog didn't even bark. How could that be?
I have to say, I've been looking at ogling these at the country store for 5 or 6 years. They never went down in price, and I finally decided they must have burned up in my garage, and I'm going to buy them.
There you go. All right.
so Diane, this is Dale. Have you got your new garage built?
It's coming. The garage door went in 2 days ago. So yes, but it's not going to be sided until the spring. But who cares about siding? The button will be pushable. The lights go on. That's all that matters.
And by the way, that is my favorite Robert Frost poem too.
I didn't know it before Terry mentioned it to me, and it's going to be featured in the spoiler alert, the next water column, which is due tomorrow, by the way. Yikes.
Really good seeing you again.
Absolutely.
Really good job, everybody.
Hi, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, and hopefully
Why is everybody
we'll have
smiling?
a person soon.
And
Have happy holidays too.
Oh, Spangberg.
Take care.
Hey,
Happy
John.
holidays, everybody.
Bye
Happy
now.
holidays.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
There's Spangberg. Spangberg. He's got a pipe coming out of his head. What
What?
a surprise.
I'm hurt. She wouldn't let me watch.
Oh, I'm just teasing, John. John, I said you have a pipe coming out of your head. What a surprise. Ah.
It's usually coming out of my mouth, not my head. I'm not from whatever cartoon that is.
That was sort of scintillating humor, though.
Okay, I have to give this back to Nancy now before she gives me the boot.
All right. Well, I think I need to sign out and get at my next priority. Good job, Nancy.
I just wanted to thank you so much for the ending poem and that beautiful.
Weirdly, I practiced it like several times this afternoon, and I made 2 typos on the text, but oh well.
It was very nice, and I love the
do have
sleigh
a-
bells.
I do have a list with the attendees. It may or may not be I have checked it like 7 or 8 times, so I think I got everybody.
I was taking notes too, so probably between the 2 of us, we've got it.
I'll put it down in an email, but I might not do it right now because
No, don't worry about it. You've got other things to do. I'm going to let you go because you've got them to do. But I really like your bangs.
What do you
They
think?
are
Woohoo!
cool. I really like it.
It's the new me.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
It's sort of the old me. I used to have bangs. We'll see how long it takes them to get gray.
Well, I like it.
Okay, thanks. Me too, actually.
You have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.